right, we have a guest in the house, like we told you earlier, that's going to be sharing with us on the challenges or the way forward for civil servants in Delta State in particular and in Nigeria in general in economic situations like this, what the government is doing, and so many other findings from our guest this morning. He's no other than the number one civil servant in Delta State, Nigeria, the head of the Delta State Civil Service, Mr. Reginald Bayoko, MNI. So good to have you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning to viewers. It's my pleasure to be here this morning.
Good morning, sir. Welcome to Morning Ride.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
There are so many issues you're going to be addressing on this set this morning as regards the civil servants in Delta State in particular and in Nigeria in general. From what's been going on since May 29, 2023, how would you describe the welfare of the Nigerian civil servant in general, and in particular the Delta State civil servant?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. The way I want to begin is by saying that, a civil servant is not cut off from the generality of Nigerians. We are all living in the same society. The only difference we can say about the civil servant is that at least they have a steady income to take home. But what we can say is that income enough to take them home. But basically, amidst the current economic realities, if you permit me to put it that way, civil servants, just like the average Nigerian citizens, have been battling with a number of challenges. But that being said, I must put in perspective that, despite those challenges which have exerted pressures on the personal finances, civil servants generally, on the average, will still strive to deliver on the government's agenda. But bottom line is, just like every other citizens of the Federation, the civil servants are feeling the pinch of the current economic realities that we're in.
Okay. In comparison to other states in Nigeria, how would you rate the morale and productivity of civil servants in Delta State?
Yes, first I'll say that before this situation that we find ourselves, because the truth of the matter is, and there's no shying away from that fact, that in the environment in which we're currently operating, it's difficult to plan because the economic condition changes virtually every day. Some people tell us that it's virtually every hour. So in that kind of environment, it's difficult to plan. But before now, the successive governments of the state have put in place a number of measures. First, we will talk about a minimum wage that was implemented under the Buhari's administration. You know that Delta State government was among the first to implement it. And even as we speak, before this new current minimum wage regime, many states didn't really get to the old one. But Delta State was there. And even when the talk about this minimum wage came, the current governor, Sheriff Oborowore, had green-lighted his intention to pay that minimum wage. And as I speak with you, if I step out of this studio, the first meeting I'm taking today, which is chaired by the Secretary to State Government, is on finalizing the minimum wage template as it affects Delta State civil and public servant. But going back to what you asked. So over the years, there have been a number of, I'll put it, welfare measures. We've stated it several times that the state government was among the very few state governments that is running housing and vehicle loan scheme, and also housing renovation scheme. What this current government had done when they saw the situation was to increase the value of the loans to individuals, which is why I said it's difficult for you to plan in the current environment. Just when you think that you have done something to cushion that effect, the realities of the economic dynamics changes it. And it's not every time you can go back to the table and start doing that. Then, of course, we can talk about the constant payment of wages. Sometimes people say, is that a measure of success, if you permit me to use the language? I say, yes, it can. If you're sure, despite that, if you're earning 10 naira and you know it's going to come on a particular date, even though you can't plan generally, at least you can plan towards the fact that you are going to get it as at when due.
Okay.
So that's been on, and of course too we heard about the wage award, which took on for quite a while, and although it ended, but the governor stopped it. No, didn't continue it. Let me not use the word stop, because he was waiting for the minimum wage and he didn't want those contradictions or confusion. Then of course there's also flexible working hours, where you work 3 days in a week. Two days the other week. They're all meant to help cushion the effects of the economic challenges. So when you compare it to many of the states of the Federation, I don't want to sit on that. I think you as journalists, you can find out what's happening.
Okay, so let's look at exactly your impression of the Delta State the Delta State worker, how they have coped over the last 1 year running. How would you describe what you have seen of civil servants in Delta State compared to what is happening in some other states of the Federation?
Yes, you need to pardon me for this, because it will amount to actually scoring myself, because I'm part of the
civil servant. If it means that, why not?
Okay, very good. But the truth must be said, in this difficult, challenging environment, let me use that word, we must say that more than ever, the civil servants in our state have shown enough of dedication. And I say this with all sense of responsibility. And usually when I make such statements, I always ask too, that of course we have political masters. You can check their views and their impression on what the performance have been. Given what we have said, and we've tried that many times as much as possible, where we have that opportunity to sink into the average civil servant's head, that this is a period of serious sacrifice. You don't expect that things will be as usual, and you try and give your best in the times of in terms of the times you are in, to ensure that there is a difference between you and the other person. So basically, within the period, we have shown, the average civil servant have shown enough dedication to drive the government's developmental agenda.
Okay, you listed some of the measures that the Delta State government came up with to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal. These measures, have they been sufficient in elevating the economic burden on civil servants, or is there need for further interventions?
Well, the truth has to be said, and that's what I also said earlier on. In an environment where the dynamics, the economic dynamics changes virtually every day. Well, I said some people say virtually an hour. We've heard stories that you go to the market this morning, you buy tomatoes for say 10 naira, you go later in the evening, it's 15 naira. There's a difficulty in planning in that kind of environment. So such that, answer your question, there is actual need to do more than is being done. Just because the situation has been created.
So what is the Delta State government doing more for the civil servant now?
Oh, yes. Like I said, now if I step out of this studio, I'm going in for a meeting where we will finalize the issue of the minimum wage. And the governor has said from day one that whatever the federal government comes out with as minimum wage, that's what he will pay. So it's a benchmark. It's for him to decide if he's going to go beyond that. But for now, it's clear that that's the where it stands. And I also mentioned the issue of the soft loan schemes. There's nowhere under the current environment where you have a single-digit loan facility. The government is doing that, and that alone, yes, because there is a bit of a cost on it, administrative and all the rest. That's why you're charging what I call that single-digit loan. Otherwise, it's more of a free giveaway. Then the governor also had a session with myself, head of service, permanent secretaries, directors, and heads of extra-ministerial department, where he said too that he was going to focus more on training and retraining civil servant, capacity building. And he did say something that you understand the fundamentals of what the average worker is looking for. You're looking for various means to put some extra income into your pocket, but that income must be legitimate. So he can afford to send you on training, and that training will hold in Asaba, for instance. And take out some costs that will take you to Lagos and all the rest, and find a way that that cost that you should have expended in going to Lagos or going to Ibadan or outside the state comes back into your pocket as a way of motivating you to concentrate on that training and at the same time balance your welfare.
Okay, so
there are a number of unspoken measures just like that. But like I also said, the working
state head of
schedule
is
a lot to reduce the strain on your personal finances.
Okay, we would like to look at the soft loans for civil servants. You made mention of car loans and the housing loans, equally the renovation renovation loan.
Yes.
Now, we remember that in the last administration at some point, these loans were put on hold. Is that a confirmation from you that they were put on hold?
It was never put on hold.
Okay.
What happened was that there was no fresh injection of capital for a while. So what was being used to disburse was repayment from the loans that had been given out.
Okay.
So it was never stopped.
Okay. So having moved from that era, are you telling us today that civil servants are back to enjoying housing loans, car loans, and of course housing renovation loans?
They didn't stop. What we have now is just an increased tempo because of the fresh injection of new funds and the increase. It never stopped.
Okay,
yes,
it's a pleasure to hear that this morning because a lot of civil servants have been looking forward to and have been making inquiries as to this. It's good you're here now addressing this same issue. All right.
Yes, well, it's just like in every human endeavor, the means will always will ever be commensurate with the needs. So there are a lot of people, and sometimes you have it's more a waiting time, a waiting period. Okay. And it's often compounded by the fact that while we even as civil servants understand the dynamics that if you have a facility running, you can seek another one when you haven't finished, and a lot of people are also waiting on the sidelines. Okay. So it becomes a bit of it creates a bit of administrative bottleneck.
Exactly.
Reducing the speed at which you can process those things and give out. So those are the issues that are contending with. Otherwise, it never stopped.
Okay. All right. Is it true that the Delta State government has not been paying civil servants in the state the expired 30,000 naira minimum wage?
The Delta State government?
Yes.
No, but that's what I just told you. It's not true. Every civil servant is earning the expired 30,000 minimum wage. And yes, I said that one because I served on that committee, which also was chaired by the then Secretary to State Government, Barrister Chinedu Ebie. He was the chairman. I served on that committee alongside the Commissioner of Finance and Permanent Secretary Accountant General, and of course the directors in the Office of the Head of Service. We were there. We signed it. There was a circular that was issued under my seal, my hand seal. So he couldn't have been, and that's why I was saying that even with that 30,000 naira minimum wage, which is called expired under the former President Buhari's regime, a number of state governments didn't adopt it. They were still falling back on 17,000, the minimum wage that was there before then. And you see something that we often fail to recognize, even in comparison to other states of the Federation. If I tell you a number of states, for instance, because yesterday I was in a meeting of the heads of service of the 36 states of Nigeria, alongside with the new head of service of the federal civil service. there are some states that the total workforce is just a segment of the Delta State workforce, where you have about over 10,000, 15,000 teachers.
Okay.
You see that their entire workforce is just about 7,000 or 8,000.
Okay.
So there are peculiarities, but never has the state government not paid that 30,000 naira minimum wage.
Okay.
If you have your facts, you bring them to me, then we'll see.
Okay, let's
You
look
may
at
just have been hearsay.
No, okay. Let's just say it
You
together.
said
because
yeah,
few
hearsay.
doesn't
You-
sound-
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Let's move on because if we dwell on this, we may just be rigmaroling
No, it's okay.
around
It's
it
okay.
and not getting. But it's fair enough that you've clarified that fact that
Yeah.
the Delta State government over the years have been paying the 30,000 naira minimum wage to
All the
its
minimum wage
workforce.
regimes, as
Okay,
long
but-
as yes, sir.
Okay,
No.
so let's move on to the relationship between the Delta State civil servants, the government, and the labor unions in Delta.
I mean, I can say that, answer that one in one word. It's been very cordial and harmonious. And part of the reason is that both sides try to be proactive. And what's also very important is everybody tries to respect their boundaries and show understanding to the other person's point of view. So relationship have been harmonious and cordial. If you look at what has been happening, you know, sometimes a lot of people say, no, but there may have been compromises. It's not. I'll just give you a typical example. Yesterday, I spent the greater part of my day in a meeting with the National Union of Nurses.
Okay.
They had actually given an ultimatum to proceed on strike. And but when we sat down on the table, of course, I understood their demands and understood where they're coming from. And we tried to address that. And we also put forward the government's position, and everybody understood it. Of course, that they put the demands. They've gone back, and they're certainly going to go back to their congresses to tell them what has happened. And before you know, they call off what they had threatened to do. What am I trying to say? Over the past years, at least I can benchmark it against the period I've served as head of service. Industrial relationship between the government, the unions, and the civil servant have been very cordial and harmonious.
What
And it's
strategies did the Delta State government employ to maintain that harmonious relationship?
Yeah, which is what I just tried to explain. It's proactiveness and understanding the position of every party. It's not a question of saying that, oh yes, your demands are obnoxious. You need to put yourself in your position. If you were there, you certainly be doing what they are doing. But it's for you to now understand that, oh yes, this is not how it is. And yesterday too, I also had cause to tell them, you know, where the governor is sitting currently, is like our father. You know, we used that word in the past, that where your father is sitting at the bottom of the tree, you who's at the top of the tree will not see it. Okay. And sometimes when he takes action, it looks as if he's foolish. But when you now get to understand that here, this is the reason and these are the whatever, everybody takes a step back and say, oh yes, do this for us and do this for us. Okay. And of course, it's a hungry child. It's just like what we're saying. Sorry, if you are beating a child, do you expect that child not to cry?
Okay.
If something bites that child, do you expect the child not to cry? You can't just shout now, why are you crying? Why are you crying? You need to understand why that child is crying. And that's part of the reasons why we've had that relationship. Understand the needs. Try as much as possible to meet them. The ones you can't meet, you explain the reason in a rational way why you can't meet them. And most times, everybody, they do understand that. Where you see that there's a breakdown, sometimes totally, you may discover now that it has transcended the issue of the labor-government relationship. Maybe it's personal or outsider. But we've not had that challenge in Delta State. And by God's grace, we will continue not to have such.
We hope so.
Yes.
All right. A lot of persons have held the opinion that government has stifled union activities, have put them in a very tight corner, given the economic situation and government's responses to the demands of labor. In Delta State, would you want to describe how exactly, or if at all it's happening in Delta State, is the state government stifling the efforts of the labor movement in Delta?
You need to pardon me on this, but I need to ask you. How do they mean that? Is it the federal government they mean have stifled?
Federal government, yes.
How have they stifled?
Let's say
Going by
workers who are not
demands,
satisfied.
demands not met at the end of the day. Let's assume an industrial action has been going on, and all of a sudden, the union resolves. Oh, let's just call off the strike, not even minding whether their demands have been met. So many judgments as regards that has given credence to the fact that government has stifled union activities in Nigeria. Would you say that of Delta State too? Because most of these industrial actions called by the NLC, Delta State Labor Force joins in that too. But before you know it, such strike actions have been called off. Does that mean to you that government is actually stifling the labor union activities?
The way I answer that, I'm not in the labor union. So I don't know what transpired in their negotiation with at the federal level. And the instance you just gave is when there's a directive from the federal unions to the local chapters, they usually obey. In the past, I'll tell you, but in the past, even if the matters that they are going on strike for, because they say an injury to one is an injury to all, they all join. So if sometimes if the union wants to pull out, like where states are not affected by what is going on at the national level, they seek leave from the national bodies to pull out. So what has happened in terms of federal government negotiation with NLC, I would say I'm not privy to the dynamics of those transactions. But in Delta State, just like I explained to you, just yesterday we had to sit down at a round table, and we came to an understanding. Nobody coerced them. Nobody forced them to do anything. They all appreciated what has gone through, and many of the fears that they had in mind too were also allayed, and they understood it. And the next day they stepped out. They changed their posture. Okay. I think that's what happens in Delta State. Nobody. I'd had a meeting where the governor. I've sat in a meeting where the governor had with some of the labor unions, and I will tell you, he made that remark that yes, sometimes people feel that perhaps he could be overbearing, but he says no, that that can't be the case, and that's the reason why he called them, and he explains his stance, and he also told them at the end of the day, is it possible for me to give to you what I don't have? If I can't give what I don't have, and you still proceed to go and do what you want to do, who is going to bear the brunt at the end of the day? It's everybody. He will only take the responsibility to say, oh, you could have prevented it, but I've tried as much as possible to prevent, and you didn't listen to me to prevent. What else can I do? So basically, it's understanding, no crippling.
Okay. You've been the head of the Delta State Civil Service for over 5 years. Yes. What reforms have you championed since your emergence?
It's 8 years.
8 years, for over 8 years.
Yes, 8 years.
Talk to us about
that's
the
a very long time. So you want to share some of these reforms with us?
No, if I'm going to start sharing them, we won't leave here.
Some of
them.
We
can start from somewhere.
Some of them. Tell us the reforms you've championed since you emerged as the head of the Delta State Civil Service.
You put me on the spot. Let me just say that basically, right, that over these past 7-8 years, like I just mentioned, we have tried as much as possible to improve service delivery. Service delivery, very important. Because at the end of the day, as civil servants, public servants, our responsibility is to the citizens. Yes, our political masters come with the vision, the agenda, they have the mandate. But to deliver on that mandate, the civil servants, public servants who are the backbone, front line, must be seen to do what is correct. So service delivery, very important. As much as possible too, we've tried to automate our working processes to simplify them and make decision making faster. Then of course, you know why I said you put me on the spot. You can't do anything too far beyond the governor as well, because he really has the vision. Mine is to deliver on that vision. We know, for instance, the Chike Osadebe Secretariat. It's
The Chike Dozian Secretariat.
Secretariat complex.
Okay,
Yes,
sir.
it means a flagship
Project.
project.
The government.
Yes, of the government, which is very marked in terms of the reforms you're talking about. We have a very conducive working environment, and virtually all the ministries, departments are accommodated, unlike the case that it was before. And of course, there's been the focus on capacity building,
Okay.
and talking about that, we still agree that given the situation we have, there's still more to do, but there's been a lot done in that regard. But basically, what I've always tried to drive home is a change of mindset. It's a difficult thing. I always tell all the civil servants, inclusive of all of us who are here, that the very basic thing that you require as a human being is to know that you know what is right and you know what is good. You don't expect me as the head of service to come and wait at the gate for you to come to your office at the time you are supposed to come to the office. You see, I came here and I was telling you I hope I came on time, because it's only natural that you feel those things. But just to answer you, I'm documenting all those in a structured way, which I'll share with you.
Yeah, once upon a time.
That's why I said you are putting me on the spot.
Once upon a time, when in the course of discharging your duties as the head of service, Delta State Civil Service, there was this clocking exercise for all civil servants.
Yes, correct.
How did that fare in the past administration? And at what point did that actually fizzle out? Because it fizzled out in such a way that not too many civil servants noticed that the clocking system in the civil service had stopped. Yes,
okay. I'll tell you.
Okay.
You see, that's what you just raised was also quite very challenging.
Okay.
But we had engagement with the labor unions before that clocking was introduced. And everybody came to an understanding. But let me, I'll speak a bit on this. You know, when we were having that discussion, the labor unions were of the view that the clock in, clock out was meant for factory workers. So it wouldn't work. We said, it's good we draw examples, but we have to put them in context. So, but I also told the labor unions that at least God has blessed me to some extent that before I became head of service, I had opportunities to traverse the globe. You go to a typical hotel, for instance, at the reception, there are no seats. The receptionist does not sit down. He stands. You don't have a private phone where you step into a hotel, the receptionist is answering a phone to somebody and you as a guest, you're waiting. You don't have that. So it took a lot of convincing, and the clocking measure was put in place. But meanwhile, that clocking measure was part of a larger biometric system, which was the automation that I referred to earlier on. It was part of a larger biometric system that got in place. And of course, after those initial hiccups, it came on. It moved on smoothly. But where it got halted, where perhaps we don't remember, was during the COVID era, where you remember where you now had to do distancing and all those health protocols. So there was no point in continuing the clocking measure. When after a post-COVID assessment had taken place, and we also assessed the impact of the clock in, as like I mentioned, was a part of a larger biometric system, and it achieved that to a large extent. There was the decision not to restart.
Now that we don't have the clocking system anymore, how does your office, the head of service office, monitor civil servants in Delta State, and how do they instill discipline to make sure that these civil servants go to work on time?
Yes, in fact, that is why I said first that the part of the reform is in the mind. Is the reform is in the mind. Even the clock out system we're talking about it was just an electronic device beyond the one that I mentioned, that I don't have to come to the gate to say I'm watching who is coming in and who is coming out. But you know, one thing that is very important is, for me, for instance, and for you, you can't be everywhere. You can't be everywhere.
True.
It means that down the ladder, there's a hierarchy. Down the ladder, after the head of service, let's take myself, then you have the permanent secretaries, then you have the directors, and the other line staff. So everybody reports to somebody. If we do our duty as it's supposed to be, I don't need to bother myself about who is coming to work or who is not coming to work. What, in effect, I'm saying is that if I notice any other thing and put that in check, is the supervising officer that I hold responsible, just like the governor holds me responsible generally. So I go down the line to the supervising officers to ensure that you come to work as at the time you come. And once I will get report, like I said, I can't be everywhere, but once we get report to in that direction, we query whoever is responsible, and it's a responsibility to drive that thing down the line and ensure that such doesn't occur. But like I said, and I'll still repeat it, fundamentally, it is your own duty to yourself to do what is right at the right time. And I'll give you an example. Sorry. Driving out of my residence, official quarters, there's a T junction that turns to the right. Just nearby too, there's another junction. There's a turn to the left that you can turn to go on a one-way to the commissioner's quarters. If I'm going to the commissioner's quarters, there's the temptation that I can just turn and take that one way because it's shorter. Yeah. I won't do that. If my driver wants to, I tell you, say, don't do that. But why he's doing that? He's seen a number of vehicles in front of him who are doing that. Okay. But it's not right. Sure. So fundamentally, we have that. Even in these days of we talk about the fuel cost. Yes. And of course it will beat down your cost of fuel for you to take that shorter route. But it's not correct. Mm-hmm. So I take that longer route. And I know my driver, they'll be telling their colleagues, what's wrong with this?
It's a thing of mindset.
It's a mindset thing. Okay. Even if the road is clear, nothing will happen. But it's basically not a correct thing to do. And so we must steep it deep down in our minds that sometimes you don't need anybody. Not need anybody to. And I remember too, when I came here, I don't know if I drew that analogy of the traffic light.
You did. Yes, you did.
It's the same thing.
Okay.
You wait.
Okay, so let's look at training and retraining of the Delta State workforce. To what extent has the Delta State government invested in the training and retraining of its workforce?
I must be honest to give my assessment on that. Okay. The Delta State government have tried as much as to train and retrain. Okay. But I think, honestly, we still need to do more. Okay. Do more. But I know the issue, we're constrained by funding issues. Okay. But within the limits of the funding issues, we have tried. There's a particular program that, despite all the challenges, we've maintained that, and that's the 7-weekend training course for officers who are aspiring to become their directors.
Okay, that's what we have playing right there on our screen. Okay, yes. Okay, so what exactly is this about? And for how long has it been on in Delta State?
It's been on for over 20 years. Oh. Yes, it's been on for over 20 years. In fact, I was a pioneer. I was a pioneer participant.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a pioneer participant of the program. All right. So when it started. Okay. So when I became head of service, there was really a gap There were some challenges in organizing them. But with the understanding of the immediate past governor, His Excellency Governor F.I.O. Koa, CON, and the understanding of our current governor, who have maintained the program and also expanded it. The program is more of a management and leadership training program for officers who are at the stage of moving on from chief officers to directors, cadre, starting from the assistant directors, deputy directors to eventual full-fledged directors. So if you don't participate and come out successfully, you can be promoted to assistant director.
Okay, there's so much though, to talk about when we're looking at the issue of training and retraining of Delta State workforce.
Yes. So much.
How would you rate the performance of the government and your office in this aspect?
If I'm going to use it in percentage term, I would say 65%.
65.
Okay.
So I'm leaving it to my incoming successor to raise the bar to up to 80.
Okay.
And 90%.
Okay, so let's,
Yes, I know you've talked about it a little, but then I still want you to talk more on it.
No problem.
What is the latest?
We're under the more agenda.
What is the latest development in relation to the implementation of the 70,000 minimum wage?
Yes.
And is there a timeline for the full implementation?
Okay.
Oh. No, since I'm sitting here, like I said, the governor has been lighted. And the issue why we have not done it is because we were still doing the spade work in conjunction with the unions anyway. Because the truth must be said, they slowed us down a bit. They said they didn't want any mistake, and we understand that. But to take it up, I don't know how I'm going to frame it. But I know the governor has given a directive. So let me use that word now. It's the governor's directive that minimum wage should be paid this October.
This October?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
It's the governor's directive that it should be.
And the contractors in Delta State.
Contract.
Pensioners.
No, of course, there's a pension law that obligates a state government to do what they call consequential adjustment once the minimum wage is affected. Okay. That is for those who are in the direct benefit scheme. Okay. Yeah, but for those who are in the contributory pension scheme, of course, the moment your emolument, your salary goes up, the level of your contribution and the government's matching contribution also goes up. So statewide, it affects everybody.
Okay, something that has been a major challenge to civil servants is the issue of arrears.
That's in the past.
It's in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, what did the head of service or the office of the head of service or the state government do in addressing the issue of payment of arrears?
Yeah, but when Governor, in fact, before Governor Sheriff Oborowore came on board, when he was campaigning, the issue was brought to his attention.
Okay.
Yes. And he promised to tackle it. And one of the very first measures, while he was drawing accolades from a lot of people, was also drawing flags from a number of people, was to pay over 5-point-something billion as a promotion arrears. But we identified it, and that's part of the things I always keep saying, that we have a duty of self-care to ourselves.
Okay.
We have a duty of self-care to ourselves. And we also have a duty of loving our neighbors as ourselves. Okay. So the issue that even gave rise to the promotion arrears, first, it's not even the government. It's from us. Once you get your promotion letter, of course, there was a challenge administratively. And that's because we were the operators of the system who were creating those bottlenecks. Okay. You want somebody is due for promotion, you want them to go and bring all kinds of things and whatever, even when you know everything is complete, just to delay the process. We who are operators. Okay. And it creates the issue. Then now you have your letter. There's a requirement from you. You know where to submit it to. You know how to follow it up and do whatever. So you don't build up arrears. But that we found out that was what was happening, which is why I said mind change is very important. Okay. You must love your neighbors yourself. You are in the system.
Okay.
You love your neighbors yourself, and you who is concerned to have a teacher of self-care to yourself. So, what the governor has said, and for us in the administrative sphere, as much as possible, in the office of the head of service, where we are responsible for promotion of senior management staff, you discover that if you don't have any disciplinary issue, in very many instances, not in all instances anyway, if you are due for promotion in July, for instance, your letter is ready by March or April. So that by the time that July is your effective date, you are presenting it.
Okay.
And the process goes, so you don't have a build-up of arrears.
Okay.
And if everybody sits down to do what is expected of he or her, you won't have any build-up. So that's what created the situation that we have. And the governor, and I don't blame him, because it's something that kept piling. And also, too, if within the operators, within ourselves, the civil servants, too, we created further bottlenecks without understanding the directive of what to do with the payment. You just take the easier way out, and the one that burdens your colleague, and say, oh no, government say you should not pay, you should not pay. And they start piling up. And meanwhile, if you are not sure that this is the thing, your duty is to seek a clearance from the higher authority, not to keep it there and say they should not pay, they should not pay. And before you know, there was a build-up. Yes. So we have tried to ensure that those things don't occur again. Of course, we applied sanctions to those who found erring without necessarily putting up in the air. But within the system, everybody knows that if you don't stand on what is correct and this thing builds up, you will be the first to account for what your inaction cost.
Okay. Yeah. Now that we've gotten to this point, in wrapping up, what would you have to say to the Delta State workforce?
I always say that I'm an incurable optimist.
Okay.
So no matter the situation that we find ourselves, I'll say the employees, they are the backbone of the government. Without the employees, the government can never deliver on the agenda. So I always advise, be steadfast, do your work as is expected of you, do the right thing. And especially at this critical moment of where we are of our economic realities, the services of the civil servant is very, very crucial. And expect that we uphold ourselves in integrity and professionalism and do what is right at all times, undermining permit me to use a language, the dark clouds that may be surrounding us.
Okay. Right. And what will be the legacy you want to impact to the civil service in Delta State when you bow out eventually?
I just want to use one word that, by God's grace, I'm leaving it to other peoples to judge. Okay. But I think that I would have left a better service than I met it.
Okay. The State Head of Service, Mr. Reginald Bayoko, wishing to leave a better civil service for Delta State. Well, he has spoken to us concerning many areas, especially in these challenging times, how the Delta State civil servant is coping with the economic reality on ground and what the Delta State government have been doing to ameliorate the plight of the Delta State workforce. So far, he has addressed issues concerning effective service delivery in a challenging economy, the Delta State civil service in focus. We must thank you very much for coming this morning to address issues that affect the everyday people, especially the civil servants in the state.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And
it's my pleasure.
And we hope that our next invitation to you will be honored as well.
Oh, yes. The way it is now, I'm not even sure I want to leave now.
But we must let you go to attend to other duties.
Thank you.
All right. Beautiful outing with the number one civil servant in Delta State, Mr. Reginald Bayoko, MNI. And on this note, we'll be wrapping up Morning Ride, Wednesday's edition right here on Delta Television, Asaba, the People's Pride. Remember, as a worker, you must put in your best to justify your earnings, to justify your monthly pay. All right, blessing.
Thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday morning on The Ride. It has been energetic and positive this morning. Please do well to stay safe and stay tuned to Delta Television.
And a great deal and pleasure to have the State Head of Service, Mr. Reginald Bayoko, MNI, sign off with us on our set this morning. All right, over to you, sir.
Okay.
Just a sign off. Thank you for watching Delta Television. Thank you for joining Morning Ride Wednesday's edition.
All right. Thank
Yes.
you for watching Delta
Television.
Thank you for joining us on Morning Ride this morning, and I hope it has been a jolly good ride.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. Tomorrow is another day. Join us bright and early right here on Delta Television, Asaba, the People's Pride. On behalf of board, management, and staff of Delta Broadcasting Service, DBS Asaba, Onome Iyaruwe here, signing off. Good morning.